Hello everyone. Now in this session we will know about the distributed databases. In previous session we already know about the introduction about the distributed database architecture. Now the architecture of distributed database, then we will know about the basic, that one is unlike parallel system, that is a parallel system tightly coupled and constitute a single database system under the parallel system. In a distributed system consists of a loosely coupled site that share no physical component. That one is the basic difference between the parallel and distributed. Now the homogeneous and heterogeneous databases under the distributed system, distributed databases. Now the what exact the homogeneous is? All sites have identical database management system software. Means if we consider these are the three websites, all the three websites have the database, same type of database management system. Are aware one another, each and every aware about one another, and agree to cooperate in a processing user request, and each other to help to each other. That one is simply the homogeneous distributed databases. Now the heterogeneous databases, different site may use different schemas, different database management system softwares. That is heterogeneous. In homogeneous, it uses the same. The sites may not be aware of one another. They may provide only limited facility for cooperation in the transaction processing. Right? It's a vice versa under the homogeneous. It communicate to each other to help each other. That one is the scenario. This is simply the homogeneous and heterogeneous. Now we will know about this concept, and which one is comes with some notes with all points. If you want to understand it in detail, you can read it out. If a distributed database, or it may be this one is available on a Google Classroom. Now distributed database is a loosely coupled site. One transaction can access data from the several sites. That's why loosely coupled. Many problem, that one is under the distributed databases have a different type of problems. We already understood that problem in a previous lecture. That one is like communicate transaction management process. Then the solution is the two-phase commitment protocol. We will know about in upcoming session. Then many problem, that one is the transaction processing and the query processing problems under the distributed databases. Now the homogeneous, all sites have the same database management system aware to each other, transaction processing possible across the all site. Then heterogeneous, different schema and different database system software. Site may not aware of to each other, transaction processing have a limitation. Now the next, distributed data storage, data replication concept, data fragmentation, and the transparency concept. Now the data replication, that one is because of the replication or the replica of the data, which one is available with a replica of a database. It's a good availability of a data. Increase the parallelism because of the replica, increase the parallelism. Now increase the overhead on update. And the third point, that one is we can say that the disadvantage, if we want to update it, it's create a overhead to update that replicas. Now the primary copy scheme, that one is simply the concept, which one is we have one main copies. We need to say that one is a primary copy scheme. Whenever we update it, that one is on a high priority to update or to maintain in a consistent. Then the data fragmentation enable you to define a group of rows and the index keys. Data fragmentation concept means divided into a number of fragments. That one is considered, we have a data of R, that one is we divided into R1, R2 up to the Rn. With all, it can be create original R. Fragmentation schemes, it run with the two horizontal and vertical. Everyone knows we divide that particular database into a table and column. If we say that the fragmentation is horizontal, that one is we represent that data into a row wise. That is division of a relation into a subset of the tuple rows. are divided into a subset R1, R2 up to the Rn. Each of them belong to the at least one of the fragments, so we can reconstruct it. In a horizontal tuple, keep where it used most. Each fragmentation have the unique row. That one is simply the horizontal fragmentation. It's stored all in a one or more fragment. So horizontal fragmentation. Then vertical fragmentation, that one is decomposing a scheme R into the relational small r, division of the relational into attribute, that one is a columns, subsets, each fragment unique column, that one is a vertical fragmentation of a particular database. Now the concept about the transparency in a distributed database system should not be required to know whether the data are physically located nor how the data can be accessed at the specific local site. There is no need to know about the all where is exact the data is and the how exact data is stored. That calls the data transparency. Now the fragmentation transparency, replication transparency, location transparency, that one is simply fragmentation. There is no need to know about which type of fragmentation is a vertical or the horizontal. Particular user can directly access that data. It's none about to what exact the data is fragmented. Same thing, user can access the data. It's nothing user don't know about how many replicas are there, right? Then the location where exact the data is stored, all the particular concept or the scenario which one is user don't know these things. That's why it's all called as the transparency, fragmentation, replica and location. Not required to know about the process about these three is called the transparency. It is simply the transparency concept. Now this is end with the basic distributed database concept with a basic introduction and some of the problem in a database, distributed databases. Now the distributed transactions, it's simply the system structure own local transaction manager, which function is to ensure the ACID properties of those transactions that execute at the site. Under the distributed database, definitely that whatever the transaction is run on the distributed database, that one is run with the distributed transactions. Now if access to the various data item in a distributed system, it usually accomplished through the transaction, which must preserve the ACID properties. There are the two type of a transaction that we need to consider. The local transaction means we have the multiple nodes. We can say that one is simply the is a one node, is a one node, is a one node, and this one is node, and the network which one is distributedly access this, right? Now the particular local transaction means here something is executed is called the local transaction. Global transaction, which is some of the data which one is update with this and this, or maybe all of, then we can say that globally it updates something. That one is done with the global transaction. Definitely everything, when we update the data under the all the node, then it will be the with the maintaining the ACID properties under the distributed databases. Now the system structure, how exactly it manages these things. Own local transaction manager, whose function is to ensure the ACID property of those transactions that execute at that site. The various transaction manager cooperate to execute the global transaction. It's a particular local transaction and the global transaction. Then the transaction manager, which one is manage all the global transactions, right? Then the concept, that one is a transaction manager, manages the execution of those transactions that access the data stored in a local site. That one is a transaction manager. Not that each such a transaction may be either a local transaction or part of global transaction. That the transaction manager, which one is manage the local or the global transaction, that is the transaction manager. Whatever the local transaction executed, it managed by the transaction manager. Then it may be the local or the global. Now the transaction coordinator, the multiple transaction executed, then we need to coordinate that transaction. That one is done by the transaction coordinator. Coordinators the execution of the various transaction, both local and global, initiated at that site. The structure of transaction manager is similar to in a many respect of structure of centralized system. Each transaction manager is responsible for maintain the log of a recovery purpose, participating in appropriate concurrency control scheme to maintain the asset property, to coordinate the concurrent execution of a transaction executing at that site. That is the responsibility of the transaction manager. Now this one is system architecture, transaction coordinator and the transaction managers. Now under the distributed database, if this concept or transaction manager, transaction coordinator, which one is executed or maintain the asset properties, then the sum of the problematic situation comes, that is failure of site, then what will be the happen, loss of message, then what will be the happen, failure of communication links, then what will be the happen, then network partition is there, then because of the network partition it may be some error is occurred, then what will be the solution. The system failure modes, this is the system failure modes. It's a fails of a particular site, loss of messages, failure of communication link and network partition. Now in a later session we will know about the solution about these failures, about this problem under the distributed databases. Thank you.